Hey there, everyone! Before we start this episode, we wanted to give you a content warning regarding a discussion of a disturbing scene that some listeners may find triggering. In this episode, we examine an event in the film that hints at sexual assault and discuss it in depth. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the episode. Stay creepy.
Hey everyone, we're the Stephen Queens. I'm Bella.
I'm Shannon.
And I'm Ashley.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining us again today. We're really happy to have you here listening to our review on The Houses October Built. Before we get started on that, we're doing our segment called Spill the Tea. So Ashley, how's your day been? How's your week been?
I'm not gonna lie, it's been a little stressful. By the time this episode comes out, election results will be out, and without getting super political, I've been more than a little stressed out about it. Today I'm drinking a bubbly sparkling water. It's the grapefruit flavor. I was going to drink this, I can't even remember what the brand of it was, but it was a stress reliever drink, and I was going to be drinking that because I think we all need some stress relief in our life right now. But it has sucralose in it, and anytime I drink sucralose or aspartame, it gives me horrible migraines. And I've already had at least 3 this week, so I don't really want any more migraines.
Yeah, none of that. But that sounds pretty good. All right, Bella, how about you? How have you been?
Stressed, like I think all of us have been. Just going through every day by day. Did that make sense? Probably not. I'm not making sense.
It made sense to me.
Words are hard right now.
Everything is hard
Everything
right now.
is hard right now. That's what she said.
We have to keep that in. That's the best. What are you drinking, Bella?
This really awesome drink. It's called water out of the tap.
I don't think
It's really fancy.
I've never heard of that before. That is
Wow,
really
the
unique.
tap. What's the tap?
It's really bougie, like really expensive.
Very cool. Very cool.
It's just like this really cool place in my kitchen.
Shannon, what about you? Spill the tea. Spill the tea.
All right. Do I have any good tea this week? No, I don't. We are all struggling. The struggle is real. School has been busy, although it's great to see my students. But yeah, elections are no joke. So that's where we are. But luckily, I am drinking a black cherry vodka soda from the brand Canteen, and I definitely stole it from my roommate. So shout out to Deborah Lynn. Yeah, it's pretty good actually.
All right, serious question. I'm a White Claw drinker. Yes, I am basic. Do I care? No. How does it compare to White Claw?
Actually, I really like it. It's very, very similar to White Claw. I am actually a vodka soda drinker when I go out, but this reminds me of a White Claw. You probably know the difference because you're a White Claw connoisseur, but for me, I would definitely get this if I was out.
Okay. I'm really picky about that, so good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I would recommend it for White Claw drinkers. It's good. Back to horror.
Awesome. So with that, we'll get into a little bit about The Houses October Built.
Woo!
The Houses October Built was released in 2014 and was the directorial debut of Bobby Rowe. The Houses October Built won Best Actress, Best Feature Poster, and Best Screenplay at the Macabre Faire Film Festival. It is given 4 out of 5 stars from myfavoritehorror.com and is a Stephen Queen indie favorite. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. You can find it on Amazon Prime, on Hulu, and I believe also on Tubi. And also, fun fact, it is known as the Houses of Halloween, I believe, in England. So if we have any English visitors, listeners, whatever, go check it out. So a little synopsis of the film if you've been a little while since you've seen it or anything like that. 5 friends rent an RV and set off to find the best of the best when it comes to Halloween haunts. During their travels, they are initially disappointed but end up getting in over their heads when they anger haunt workers in search of the famous Blue Skeleton group. They find themselves questioning just how far people are willing to go to get a good scare. Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
So the genre of The Houses October Built is considered a horror documentary, horror mockumentary, a found footage film. But before we get into that, I have a question for you two. Have you ever been to a haunted house or a haunted attraction?
Yes, and I absolutely love them. They are some of my favorite things to do in spooky season, but unfortunately this year I did not partake.
I didn't know that you liked those, Shannon. I'm learning more things about you.
I do. You can ask our friend Kelly. Shout out to Kelly. She actually listens to our podcast. Yay!
Hey, Kelly.
We went to like 7 in one day at Fright Fest, I think, or was it Haunt Fest? I don't know. Fright Fest, I think that's what it's called at Six Flags. But we got this haunted house pass and we went to like 7 in one night and they were all different themes and they were really fun. I know there
Ooh,
are a
that
lot of
sounds spooky.
It was spooky. It was great. But then you get kind of desensitized. Do you like them?
So I don't. I've only ever been to one, and it was with an ex-boyfriend of mine. We were on vacation, and I think the big problem was it was one of those Ripley, believe it or not, attractions. It was like a haunted house. Shouldn't have been that scary, but it was like during the middle of the day and no one else was there. So literally all of the haunt workers had nothing to do except for chase us around and pick on us. So it was like all of them just coming at us all the time, the whole time at once. And I'm a big rule follower. So they said, you can't run, you can't touch us, and you can't turn on a flashlight. So like my first 3 instincts are gone. And this guy runs at us with a chainsaw. I'm like, I want to punch him. Not allowed to do that. I want to run away. Not allowed to do that. So I stood there and I screamed. And he just looked at me up and down and then awkwardly walked away because it's like, this girl's screaming. I don't know what to do because she's not running anywhere.
It's funny because you go, the problem I think was, and I'm like, well, sounds to me like the problem was the ex-boyfriend because that's spooky enough, but you know.
True story. What about you, Bella? Do you like scary haunted houses?
No, I don't. And let me tell you why. Because 2 things. 1, when I was in elementary school, we went to what was then called Wyandotte Lake.
Yes.
For a friend of mine's birthday.
I
And
love that place.
yeah. Well, you know how they do like the scary night? I went for birthday party and her birthday's in October. So when we went there, some guy had a chainsaw and was like obviously trying to terrorize us because why wouldn't you? That's your job. And we ran out of the park and got in trouble. The second thing, I think Ashley might know this, is my parents were out of town during like Halloween time and I was staying with and her family. And
I remember this.
Yeah, so they're really big into Halloween. We went to like what was also then the zoo or Wyandotte Lake Zoo, whatever, but they were closed. So they were like, perfect, let's go to a haunted house. I did not sign up for that when I agreed to stay with them. Well, we got in there. I was freaking out and had to carry me on his shoulders through the haunted house because I could not handle it. And I'm not ashamed to say that I was in middle school.
Hey, but you can be like 11, you can be 12 in middle school. That's still young, right?
Yeah.
Like that's totally normal.
It was terrifying. I don't do that. My thing is, like you said, I would accidentally punch a scare actor. Like it wouldn't be intentional, maybe. I can't guarantee that. But I would definitely end up punching somebody, and I know that's wrong. So
maybe they'd like it though. I mean, some of them think that's pretty cool.
It's interactive. We love interactive things.
You're interacting back with them.
Exactly.
As long as they can't touch me, I don't mind it. As long as they can't touch me. So what I kind of do, I'm ashamed to say, is I cower in fear. And then usually they'll get up in your face and then they'll leave you eventually. I know they're going to leave me eventually. But no, I love them. I love them. But then by the end, I get so desensitized and I'm like, oh, hey, it's another creepy clown. I liked the last one better.
So my friend Taylor and I thought of a great idea for people who want to experience a haunted house but are not capable of doing that. Here's what it is. And it's COVID safe, even better. What you do is you get a track like what happens at a car wash. You put your car on, put it in neutral. It automatically does it for you. You're in the car. You can roll down the windows if you want. You could keep them up, put a nice blanket on, have a snack. But the scare actors are outside and you don't have to feel unsafe or whatever. Basically, it's a cop out because I'm a little bee.
Hey, I will say though, there are scary movies where there are bad guys chasing the main characters, the protagonists, in a car. That can still be just as scary, but give you that little security blanket.
Gives
in
you
a
a
way.
thrill, but it's not like, yeah, that actually sounds really fun. I like that idea. We could do
So
that.
we're going to be starting a
Halloween.
crowdfunder. We're going to start a crowdfunder for this sort of event. So everyone give us money so we can do it.
Yes. Also, it kind of ties into the movie because they're terrorized in a vehicle as well.
So I think I think kind of going off of that, all of these places that we've gone to, they're real, obviously real places that mess with you, whatever. Moving into more of the topic of the movie, this film showcases real attractions that people can visit. It's not just ones that are made up in a script that are make-believe or fictional. These are real attractions. And Bobby, for both, there's a House is October Built 1 and 2. Bobby made a list of the scariest haunts in the U.S. for both movies. And, actually, fun fact, Ohio made the list both times. 5 separate haunts in Ohio made this list. I believe the only other state that had that many was California. So there's just something about Ohio that makes people a little spooky.
I think they mentioned Haunted Hoochie, which is for us is a really well-known one where we're from, which I thought was super cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. We have all these serial killers.
Right. Serial killers, attractions.
Yeah, and Columbus has a lot, but all over Ohio. I don't know what's wrong with us here, but we love scary stuff. And what's kind of cool is I looked it up, and according to, let me find it here, thescarefactor.com, Ohio has the second highest number of haunted houses, right behind California. We have 131 haunted attractions in Ohio. So that's kind of twisted. And they do mention, I listened to an interview with 4 of the actors slash directors slash producers, the people who made Houses October Built on YouTube. I listened to Paul Chambers interview them with moviechambers.com, and they do give a shout out to Columbus, Ohio, which is really cool.
So isn't California 3 times bigger than Ohio? That's a lot of haunted houses for not a whole. I mean, you can drive across the state of Ohio in 4 hours, 4-ish hours. That's a lot. Note to self, if you ever want to scare yourself, move to Ohio.
Yeah, it's scary enough as is, but this adds a lot to it. And what's interesting, before we get back into, we were just talking about how they made it so realistic, how they actually interviewed scare workers or, horror, what do we call them?
Haunt workers? I don't know.
Scare actors.
Scare actors, yes.
Scare workers. It reminded me of sex workers. When they interviewed these scare actors, it was as organic as you could almost possibly get. I loved that aspect of the movie. The movie was just so believable because of that. But what's kind of a funny story, talking about Ohio being extra haunted, is the high school I used to work at was next to or nearby the haunted attraction Land of Illusion in Middletown. A lot of my students used to be scare actors, and so a lot of them would show me their makeup that they did. And keep in mind, these are high schoolers. They would come to school, they'd show me their cool, creepy contacts, and it was really cool. But it's funny because they'd be like, Miss Kernan, you should totally come visit us at work. Come to Land of Illusion. And I was like, guys, as fun as that sounds, I can't, because I do have the mouth of a sailor when I watch scary movies, and also when I am at haunted houses, I just let her loose. So I said, I really don't want my students, current or former, to hear me cussing them out ever.
And you don't want to like accidentally punch one of them because they jumped out and scared you.
I don't want
That
to
would
punch
not
them.
be
As much
good.
as Ashley enjoys kicking small children, I don't enjoy assaulting any minor or really anybody in general.
Okay, but do we think it's kind of funny that I'm like jokingly okay with kicking children, but I won't punch or touch a scare actor? You think it's a little funny? A little bit?
I do think it's funny. And what's interesting is with, haunted houses and these scare actors is these people could be totally sus. They don't even have background checks. So like you could be, if you punched a scare actor, you could be punching a totally innocent person. You could be punching God knows who.
It's true. And I think an interesting thing going into the whole scare actor kind of going off of that is, the opening quote of the movie is, I'm not afraid of werewolves or vampires or haunted houses. I'm afraid of what real human beings do to other real human beings. And Bobby quotes this in an interview that I watched. They were asking him and Mikey, who is actually his real brother, fun fact. And Mikey said that, he was afraid of snakes. That was his greatest fear. But Bobby said, the quote at the beginning of the movie really wraps up what I'm most scared of. It's the things that people do, the things that people are capable of doing to one another. And when you are put into a haunted house situation, you don't really necessarily think about it. But, a lot of places like that don't do background checks. And all of the interviews in this movie are real interviews by real people. So some of them saying how they go a little extra far, they want to do this to a person, or they want to do that to a person. That's what someone legitimately really thinks. And that's kind of scary.
And the fact that these haunted houses, these people are meant to, the goal is to terrorize you. Somebody doing that who hasn't had a background check that itself is a terrifying aspect. And the interview that I was listening to, they did say that. There was one interview they referenced where the person said that they were considering starting background checks the next year. And somebody in the interview, so one of the guys in the movie said, it's funny because he was so proud of himself. Like, oh, we're really going to start background checking people. That shouldn't be something you're proud of. That should be just at a minimum what you do. There's no haunted house regulation board, and really there should be, because of some of the things that have happened in real life at these places.
I have friends who are scare actors, and they're great people, but it really makes you think, do you really know who these people are who are chasing you with a chainsaw? Bobby and Mikey had said that they went to a haunted attraction, and, Bobby's a big guy. He's 6'4", I think. They put him in a box and threw him down a flight of stairs. Like, for me, that's, whoa, not cool. It's the same reason why I would never go to, like, the Haunted Hoochie, like a really popular haunted house, haunted attraction in Ohio. I've heard that you have to sign waivers that the people can touch you and do things like that. And while I, to a point, would like to say that I have trust and faith in the human race, I also don't. And I don't like strange people touching me. I always say I'm a hugger, but I don't want random people I don't know who potentially aren't background checked to be putting their hands on me. That just, for me, is not entertaining.
I think this is a great time to start talking about Russ McKamey and McKamey Manor. And if you guys don't know, McKamey Manor is a haunted house, a haunted attraction run by Russ McKamey. He, I believe, was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And now he creates these, I don't know how to express it, disturbing, horrific haunt attractions that are done not even in a house. They're just done around his home. And you do have to sign a waiver.
So That's a really, really good point, Bella. For anybody who's interested in that, there is a movie called Haunters, The Art of the Scare, and McCamey Manor, Wes McCamey's haunted attraction is a big part of that. Or you can watch the TV show Dark Tourist, one of their final episodes. And Dark Tourist is put on by David Farrier. Hey, David Farrier. But the McCamey Manor, it's a nonprofit haunted house, and they call themselves a survival horror house. It's basically like survival horror events are performed, and McCamey Manor is considered a pioneer of this sort of extreme haunt. It was founded out in San Diego. It was originally located on his property, and it operates year-round. And the tour can last anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And as Bella said, before you go in, you have to sign a liability waiver. You have to go a mental health test. It's been a huge thing of controversy, criticism, media scrutiny, because what it does to people is absolutely intense. Recently, McCamey didn't allow safe words. You weren't allowed to say peaches and then go home. You weren't allowed safe words. And it is, some of the things that he would do are just absolutely disgusting and terrifying.
Yeah. So to talk about those, there's some of the attraction, whatever you want to call it, contains waterboarding, drinking unknown substances, being bound and gagged, physical and mental torture. And this is why you have to have a, medical check before, and any of those checks and appointments, they come out of your own pocket. And Ashley, you mentioned this is a nonprofit. Something that I found really interesting is initially they were saying, okay, so for the entry fee, essentially that you just had to bring a bag of dog food and it was going to be donated to this nonprofit. But with that, there was some confusion with, they went onto the website of the nonprofit and then found out that it was linked back to Russ McCamey, and it was just very sketchy. And there was a lot of other interesting things that this man is not to be trusted. I mean, his kids don't even talk to him. He is clearly not dealing with his mental health issues in a productive way. His way apparently is torturing people. And the sickest part about it is you can view their videos on YouTube, and I'm not suggesting you go, but I watched this one girl. She was one of the first people to ever do it, and hers was allegedly tame. I saw the video. People need to understand, you sign a waiver saying you're okay if you die, that it's not on Russ, it's on you.
It's absolutely terrifying, some of the things that they just talked about in that movie. And one of the things in the movie Haunters, The Art of the Scare, is Russ's neighbor, back when they were doing it at their house, when they were allowed to do that. His neighbor, who was a woman, I believe she was single. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure she was a single woman. She might have had kids, but she was a single woman living in the house. And from my understanding, it's been a little bit since I've seen it, but from my understanding, Russ tried to get her to come to the house to be a part of it. She said no, and he ended up tricking her into being a part of it, I believe, at least twice. So it was, I can't remember exactly what it was. It's been a few years since I've seen it, but I remember at least twice, I believe she was forced to be a part of this haunt against her will. Go watch this. It is, if you're just interested in the human psyche and human interaction and things like that, go watch it, because I found it interesting for that reason. But, for me as a woman, I think that's terrifying, especially, this woman was about my height, so we're both 5'2", we're both pretty short. To think that your neighbor, you want to trust your neighbor, someone could do that to you is absolutely, just gives me a pit in the bottom of my stomach.
Yeah, it's insane. One last thing before we move on. I think everybody should get on the hashtag shut down McCamey Manor train, because this is messed up. Research it, do whatever, make your own opinion, but it's messed up.
Yeah,
End of discussion.
there's like a waiting list to go there, and I get everyone has their own thing that they're interested in. Not about it.
No.
No, that
Not
goes too far. And honestly, Ashley, what you were talking about with his neighbor, that makes me think of something that I would like to bring up that I think we all were thinking of is, first of all, part of the reason why we created this podcast in general, but being a woman in the horror world, but also how women are portrayed in horror movies, how women are treated at haunted attractions, and how Brandy, the experiences that she went through in the movie, I just find it fascinating because there is a discrepancy between how men are treated in the horror world and how women are treated in the horror world. And in the interview that I watched, they talked about how at some of the places, that's because they went through these haunted houses for real in the movie, and this footage of them going through with Brandy being scared and people, coming up to her in these haunted houses and coming up behind her, they would specifically come up behind her thinking that Mikey is standing behind her, knowing that Mikey was standing behind her. They would switch places with Mikey, put their hand on her, like touch the back, and she would think it was Mikey, and she would turn around and it wasn't Mikey. And that's legitimate fear there. And, it could be said, well, they could have done that to one of the guys too, but they didn't. They did it to Brandy. There are other parts of that movie where she is specifically put in situations where it would be much different for a man to be in that situation than a woman.
Yeah, I think Brandy was definitely genuinely scared throughout the movie since all the haunted houses and haunt actors and actresses were pretty much real. But from my understanding, they brought Brandy along because they all went to high school together. So they went to Plano Senior High, which Plano is where my dad is. So yeah, that, I don't know. Props to her for getting through.
Yeah, and this is by no means a criticism necessarily of the actors or of Bobby or of the film itself. This is just for at least on my end, just something that I noticed across the horror genre in general is there's a scene in the bathroom. I guess the one trigger warning that I would give from this film is that there is a scene where Brandy is, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, here are some spoilers. There is a scene where Brandy goes into the bathroom and two scare actors in masks come in with a camera and basically, without necessarily saying it, very strongly hint at sexually attacking her. And for me, I know that's the one scene in the entire movie that I don't like. I don't think it necessarily adds anything to it. That it's at that point where the guys realize, no, they're going to try to go after Brandy. That's not cool, which is understandable, but they could have done it in such a way that didn't have to go that sexual attack route. And I, myself, personally am fed up with horror films using sexual violence to further plots in films. And this isn't a direct criticism of Bobby or of the film or the actors in this movie. This is me criticizing the horror genre as a whole. It's something that's used way too often to create motivation. I'm sorry, I have a lot of motivations in life that are not resolved or revolve around sexual violence.
And just real fast, just women are used as pawns in the horror world / horror movies often. And this is something, I mean, it's illustrated just very briefly there, but that has a huge impact watching that as a woman.
I think also it goes into what we talked about when we did the Rob Zombie segment. Brandy, being a friend of theirs, has a say, I believe. I don't think the guys would have been like, oh, you're uncomfortable. Well, we're doing this anyway. Mm-hmm. So Brandy was willing to be in the film. So it's that fine line of where do I really sit, because Brandy obviously was willing to be in this scene, but also as three women, I think we're like, oh, that's not comfortable. Like, that doesn't sit well for us.
At some point, if we can, we'll share a link to the feature spot we had on the Creature Features podcast for their Rob Zombie director focus episode, where we discuss more a little bit about Rob Zombie and some of his films and his wife's roles in his films and things like that definitely highly connect to this. But Bella, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of this is about consent, and Brandy consented to that. So I respected in that way. And by no means am I pooping on, or pardon my language, shitting on this film. I really like The House is October Built. It's one that I recommend to everyone I can. It's just something within the horror genre that I myself am a little frustrated with.
Yes, and I agree with that. And it is important to talk about the consent. I do think that that scene did illustrate how it is different for women being in these situations. So I will say that I did like that. But instead of condemning sexual attacks, they went more into the bravado of, and I like these guys. I'm just saying, the way I took it was like, oh, we can't ever leave Brandy alone. We have to watch Brandy. Well, this could have been a good time to talk about how that just behavior for men in general. I don't know how you would include that in the movie, but when I went with Kelly to one of the haunted houses, and this is a very minuscule example comparatively, but I was in one of the haunted houses and I got hit on by a scare actor in the haunted house while we were going through. And it wasn't like it was a huge deal. And, you know, he made a comment to Kelly, like, oh, your friend's really cute. And he said it in this weird voice. Like, he was kind of leering at me. And then I went forward because I was scared. And he said that to her, and she was like, okay, what was the point of that? Number one, that does show how it is different for women. First of all, you took away from my experience that I'm paying for because I want to be scared, and I don't want to be creeped out in a you're a weird guy who's hitting on me scared, because I get that in my daily life enough. I just don't want, I wanted to be legitimately scared in a haunted house, and it's not fair that you just broke character to make a comment like that to me that you wouldn't make to a guy. I just think that's unfair. I know that sounds like I'm making too big of a deal out of it, but it just felt annoying to me, you know?
I can understand that completely.
So another thing that I think we should briefly touch on is the strip club scene. I don't know about you guys, but I think that the scene at the strip club was boobs just to have boobs. I think it was just the guys and Brandy, and maybe Brandy likes strip clubs. I don't know. I know there's girls that like strip clubs,
I agree with
but
that, but her face in that scene, she was not liking the antics. They were majorly broing out a lot in this movie, and they were inappropriately broing out in that scene.
So I don't mind strip clubs. I think it's kind of funny to have a zombie themed or a dead haunted strip club thing. I think that's funny. You know, exotic dancing is a valid job that can be really empowering to those people who work in that industry. So in that aspect, I didn't have an issue with it. My issue with it was that Brandy, at least in the script, even just within the script sense, Brandy was visibly uncomfortable with it, and the guys didn't really care. That part just kind of was like, all right, we get it. Boobs for boobs' sake. It connects, quote unquote, because of the horror theme. So, but I get it. It was just kind of like, okay, like,
I see it very loosely connects. This was definitely a scene for the boys. We already had a lot of sex jokes throughout the movie, which funny, yeah, like I'm not, it's fine. I don't, I like a good sex joke. I'll admit it. Call me Michael Scott. But no, I'm just kidding. But it just, to me, it went a little too far. I can understand, like, even just showing some boobs, I guess. I mean, I'm not a fan of it because I thought it was dumb, but the fact of the matter is that, like, they got, like, kind of really intense about it, like putting their face in their boobs and just, in my opinion, being disrespectful. I know that these actors or these women consented to it, whatever, but to me as a woman watching it, I really hated that part. Like, I'm not trying to sound like a prude. That's not my intent. I just thought this scene was definitely for the guys. I thought it cheapened it for me, honestly. I thought that it would have been better without it. And that's just my personal opinion.
I think another thing that we have to at least touch on is the genre of the film as a found footage horror and how popular those are. And although this is a found footage film, it's a little bit different than your typical found footage film. You know, Bobby said in an interview that he thought the found footage genre is a little bit watered down, and he wanted to make something that was a little different. In found footage films, oftentimes, even though it's found, the footage just somehow edits together a little bit too smoothly, and he wanted to make sure that while the plot and what you're seeing makes sense, he didn't want it to go too much, like too smoothly. And Zach had said, we didn't set out to make the scariest movie in the world. We wanted to make something different and creepy. So it's a different feel throughout the movie. And even afterwards, you're walking away still thinking about it, and it stays with you a lot more than a possession movie, which I think is accurate. This one really did sit with me for a little bit.
I think that it does sit with you longer because these are real scenarios. These are, especially like we talked about with McCamey Manor, these are plausible situations that do and can happen. And I think that's the scariest thing. Like that makes us most scared is this can actually happen, you know, a spooky ghost. Yeah, okay, sure. You can have a ghost, but like, is a ghost going to appear more often than these types of interactions? So I think that's a really good point when it comes to this movie specifically.
And like you said, yes, it's more realistic, but you do get that extra extreme aspect to it. And we as the viewer want to think, oh, that wouldn't happen. Like these scare actors somehow following them, or, you know, the blue skeleton group existing. These things very much could happen. And these things, like the blue skeleton group, that might not actually be a group that exists, but those types of places do exist, these underground types of things. And they were talking about in the interview, we've gone from 3D to things wanting to be 4D. Like you need the touch aspect of it now, right? So what they mean by that is even in the horror world and the haunt world, we want something, we just always want something more. These underground places do exist, and that to me opened my eyes to something with this film. I mean, it did make me kind of double think, like, is it real?
True. Another thing that I think is interesting within the film that you don't necessarily always see in like a documentary style film is, but it's common in horror films, is punishing characters for their desires. It's something that's very, very common in many films. And it's basically, it's in film where it's this theme and trope of characters doing whatever it takes to get what they want. So this concept of be careful what you wish for comes up. You know, character makes a wish or expresses a wish, and then when they actually get the wish that they wanted, it doesn't live up to their fantasy, and then they come to regret it. You know, there's a scary story. I've been looking all over for it. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a genie or magic lamp, and this person gets these 3 wishes, and they make these wishes, and then afterwards, all of the wishes go horribly awry, and their life is completely ruined. And these characters, they long for the scariest of haunts. They do everything they can to make a good movie. They even piss off haunt workers, and their need to make a good film is what leads to their demise. And I think that is something you don't always see in a lot of these types of movies.
I think that's really interesting, and that's something that I honestly didn't think about, but now that you mention it, I mean, you're right. That is, and it kind of goes into the human, like, what is it? One of the 7 deadly sins, right?
Pride?
Pride maybe a little bit in there, or even like
Lust.
greed. Lust.
Lust.
Yeah, lust.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of.
So with that, I think that's our review of The House is October Built. Woohoo!
That was a real, it is a good one, I will say.
Oh, go watch
Love
it. So with that, we should probably get into our reviews. So, Bella, what do you rate House is October Built?
I am going to give it 9 out of 10 crowns because I thought for a like found footage type film, it was done really well. And I think it's really interesting to see all the like behind the scenes of these haunts. And I mean, it's kind of like a fun tour guide. You get to learn about real attractions and see different situations. And I think it's a really cool experience and very well done. And I give it up to them. So I'd say 9 out of 10.
Shannon, what about you?
This might sound a little harsh considering some of my other reviews, but I think I'd give it a 7.5. And to me, that's still really good. I liked a lot of things about it. There were things, though, watching it after, a few times that I wasn't as happy about, that I do get annoyed with the horror world. So one of those things being how women are portrayed in film. Another thing being, again, it just watching it back again, it did feel like it was made more for men who are watching it. And that just really struck me this time for some reason. And mad respect to the actors. I think it was really well done. They had a great new concept. I do give them they're really innovative. I do still recommend the movie, but through the quote unquote female lens, I do think it deserves a 7.5 for me.
So, Shannon, you're going to have to stop stealing the ratings I'm going to give films, because I was going to give it a 7.5 and now I can't, because now it's going to look like I'm copying. So
I'm just so popular.
I can't help it that I'm popular. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, mainly for the same reasons. I love this film. I recommend it to everyone I can. Just for me, having that scene in the bathroom is just a little much for me, and always just puts a little bit of a pit in my stomach, and not the good kind.
I want to change my rating because I think that scene was unnecessary. So I'm shooting it back down to an 8. Sorry, Bobby. Hey, Bobby.
Hey,
Get
Bobby.
from me!
Sorry, it clicked. But I think that's a really good point, and so I am gonna have to reduce my rating down to an 8 just because it was unnecessary, and there's other ways to, I don't know, be creative. It doesn't have to be a sexual attack. That's disturbing and wrong.
Agreed. So with that, I'm going to move into my Ashley fun facts, and Bella's going to give a couple of fun facts because I really struggled to find fun facts for this movie. So, fun fact number 1, Bobby said that the film had one really main inspiration, but an also movie he compared it to. So he said that he was really inspired by the film Cannibal Holocaust, and he wanted this movie to be the Cannibal Holocaust of haunted houses. So if you haven't seen Cannibal Holocaust, don't watch it. That's just me. I don't like it. It's very gory. Go look it up. Go look up what it's about. It inspired another movie called The Green Inferno, which I did watch. I could not get all the way to the end because, spoiler alert, has female circumcision in it, and I'm not down with that. So, yeah, it was gross. So don't watch Green Inferno. Don't watch Cannibal Holocaust. But Bobby said that just kind of being in that world kind of left up to the scare actors. That was kind of his thing. And then he more really compares it to Borat. He says that he put himself and the rest of them in situations where the people weren't necessarily aware and wanted to get the most real, authentic reactions out of them, where maybe the people aren't entirely aware of what type of movie they're going to be in, so their reactions are more real, very similar to a Borat. Fun fact number 2 is the actors were somewhat blind going into this. Some of the footage is real and unscripted, while other parts of the footage are very scripted and have a plot point to them. And it's very difficult as the audience to kind of figure out which is which. And the point of that was to blur the lines between reality and fiction, which make it that much more creepier. Fun fact number 3, Bobby, the director, the guy with the longer brown hair. Hey, Bobby. Bobby used to be a baseball player, and he's like 6'4". Just a heads up, that's my ideal height.
Ooh.
There we go, Shannon, single. You should hit her up.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure he's married.
Oh, well, if you ever one day find yourself not married, hopefully that doesn't happen, but if you ever find yourself not married.
Oh.
But Bobby was a baseball player, and he was super into horror movies, so he's like, you know what? I'm going to go to film school. So while in film school, he and a friend decided they wanted to make a found footage film, but covering the spooky idea that some haunts have real dead bodies in them, something that happened once by accident back in 2011. So initially, they made The House is October Built in 2011, played it at some small film festivals, and it caught the attention of some more famous people, such as Rob Zombie. So because, this little indie film was fairly popular at the festivals it played at, receiving funding to make it, added in the blue skeleton plot point, but still use some of the same footage from the initial movie. And that's why we have the film today, which I think is really cool. And I guess thank you, Rob Zombie, for this film. I mean, thank you, Bobby and Cass, but thanks, Rob Zombie. We love you. Bella, you had some fun facts too.
More of just like something interesting that I found through the interview with Paul Salfin. I hope I'm saying his name right, but they talked about their favorite scary movies, which I thought was appropriate for us. Bobby Rowe, the main guy, his is the first half of It. He said he did not like the second half of It, and he kind of just tossed it.
Like the original TV miniseries or the new one?
I would assume from when this was filmed that it was the
original TV
yeah.
movie. Okay.
Because let's be honest, that's significantly better.
Agreed.
Tim Curry.
Chef's kiss, Tim Curry. We love you.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, Tim Curry.
Zach Andrews, which I think this is going to be funny because I know Ashley's going to have a reaction because she has some feelings about this. His is The Shining.
Ew. Sorry.
When you said that, I was like, oh, okay.
That's a bummer.
That is a bummer.
And Mikey Rowe, Bobby's brother, same thing. He said it's The Shining, Pet Sematary, and The Ring, which I love The Ring. And this one, I think we can all get on board with. Brandy said her favorite movie is, that's a drum roll, is Candyman.
Yes! Oh my god,
So
and
I
she
thought
picked
that
one
was
with a
pretty
strong
cool.
female lead.
Yay!
Yes.
Brandy,
so I thought
we
that
love you.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. We all love Candyman. We think he's very spicy, and
he follows us on Twitter.
Yeah, he does, which is amazing. And we were in total disbelief. So, Brandy, we wholeheartedly agree.
Brandy, we love you. Tony Todd, we love you. Horror stands, we love you.
Yes, we love our horror community.
Yes. And with that, that's our review of The House is October Built.
Go ahead and make sure to follow us on social media, and please comment and say what you thought about our episode. We'd love to hear your feedback. So follow us on Facebook. We're the Stephen Queens, and Stephen, for your reference, is spelled Stephen. We're on Instagram as @thestephenqueens, and we're on Twitter as @Stephen_Queens.
Thanks for tuning in. This is Bella.
This is Shannon.
And this is Ashley. Stay creepy.